Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the movie Hangout. Well, it finally happened. Alex Jones finally came back to the Joe Rogan podcast and it was epic. Let's talk about it right now. So, as you all know, Alex was on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple years ago, and it was podcast number 911, so 911, of course. And it was huge. I mean, there were tons and tons of views on it. I think this actually beat it. So here you have Alex. Alex was on February 27th, and I wanted to give this a little bit of time to breathe because I wanted just the numbers to rack up so we could really take a look at it. Okay, so let's go through the stats on this video. So these guys talked for almost 5 hours. 4 hours, 40 minutes, and 27 seconds. I mean, and to be honest with you, if they would have had a little more gas in the tank, like Alex did, they could have gone for another 2 hours easily. And Alex could have spoke this entire almost 5 hours just sitting alone by himself. Because if you watch his show, the dude is just he. I mean, he is a talented performance artist. Even Joe Rogan said that. Joe Rogan's like, dude, you're hilarious, you're funny, you're witty, you know a lot about a lot of things. Why don't you just like do just stand up or something? And I personally think that Alex probably could do stand up. I mean, it is incredible. And it's so apparent in this podcast because he's funny, he's interesting, and he talks about so many just strange and unusual and interesting topics. Okay, so it's the Joe Rogan Experience podcast number 1255, so 1255, titled Alex Jones Returns. And right now, uh, it has 6,244,477 views. So yesterday there was a little over 5 million views. So this thing is just basically a million views a day. More people are watching this podcast episode than Trevor Noah, than Stephen Colbert, than Jimmy Kimmel. And I mean, it's just incredible how new media has surpassed old media. It has 210,000 likes and only 7,600 dislikes. So the like to dislike ratio is off the chart. Um, let's see, comments 76,768. I mean, so there is a lot of activity on here, people discussing and just getting interactive with it. I watched the whole thing. I couldn't get I just couldn't click off of it. I mean, it is so interesting. Alex, right out of the gate, talks about the Sandy Hook controversy, kind of clears the air about that, and then it gets a little. The conversation gets a little meatier. It starts talking about Trump, and then it talks about what all of us wanted to hear when Joe Rogan spoke to Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, when that is censorship, of especially censorship of conservatives or just censorship of people that are not hardcore leftists. People that are just, just normal in the middle, they like some things that are liberal, some things that are conservative. There's even liberals getting censored by leftists. It's ridiculous because they won't go along with the crazy ideas. And so Alex talked about that. Alex talked about being banned on Twitter, being banned on YouTube, Facebook. I mean, he's even banned on LinkedIn, which doesn't even make any sense. So he spoke about that, and then he kind of confronted Joe about, Joe not talking about that and not bringing him up and really pressing Jack Dorsey when he had Jack on the show. And what I loved about this whole thing is that the reason why Joe Rogan brought Alex back on, in my opinion, is because I guarantee a large portion of Joe Rogan's fan base are also Alex Jones fans because it's about the same demographic of people, same age bracket, mostly men, and a lot of people listen to Alex Jones. They like his opinions, they like how he thinks. They like him. He's entertaining, and so they pressured, and it was so obvious when would go on Joe Rogan's social media, even when Joe would do interviews with other people unrelated to social media, people would be commenting about Alex Jones. They'd be commenting about Joe Rogan just being a cuck and not sticking up for the freedom of speech. And so they, in my opinion, they shamed Joe Rogan into doing the right thing and having Alex back on so he can speak for himself. Because this is the whole thing with censorship of social media. If they remove your ability to talk to the public and then they say untruths about you, there's no way for you to refute that. I mean, back in the old days, if a newspaper said something bad about you and it was untrue, you could sue the newspaper because the newspaper fell legally under a publishing laws, because they curate and they can pick and choose what they print. And because of that, because they actually have an editors and people that can pick and choose the content, they are held liable. The social media companies, though, have found a way around that. They claim they are not publishers. They claim they are not curating the content. And so because of that, they cannot be held liable for anything crazy, ridiculous, or untrue that's written about you. Basically, the difference is a newspaper is like, hey, we're a newspaper. We control what is written on the piece of paper that you're purchasing. So anything that's on there, we're responsible for. A social media company, they come out and they say, we're not a newspaper. We are a big dry erase board in the town square, and you can write anything on that dry erase board. And we're not, because everybody can write something on there, we are not liable for what is written on there. Well, the problem is that after everybody writes what they want on that dry erase board and leaves and goes home, in the middle of the night and under the cover of darkness, these tech giants, they come out and they erase what a certain group of people are writing on the dry erase board, and then they are, putting a note in the mail and saying you're not allowed to write anything else on the dry erase board. And so they are curating their content. They're just doing it in secret. So they should be held liable the same as a newspaper, and they should be able to be sued. And a lot of that is what Alex Jones is talking about. It's also happened to Steven Crowder, Owen Benjamin, Gab McGinnis. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I love that Alex talked about that. And then Alex talked about some crazy things like how the Nazis had made a deal with aliens, and they got futuristic tech knowledge from aliens. Now the Silicon Valley, they do DMT parties, which actually that is true. They do DMT parties, but they do DMT parties to speak to spirits in another dimension, and it just goes on and on. And I mean, it's like this whole episode is like, if you listen to an Alex Jones episode with Joe Rogan, it's like Alice in Wonderland. It's like you are Alice, and you start out in the real world, and you start chasing the white rabbit, and Alex is the white rabbit, and he just keeps hopping along, making funny noises, and you keep following him, and then eventually you fall down the rabbit hole, and it just keeps spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And the deeper you get into Wonderland, the crazier everything ends up coming out. And when you end up here, so it's normal here. When you end up at the 4 hour and 40 minute mark, you're talking about space aliens, demons, uh, flat Earth theories. I mean, NASA was started by Nazis. I mean, just really, really bizarre stuff. And it's just so fun to go down this rabbit hole and just see where it leads. Way more fun than network television. Network television, they can't talk about any of this stuff. It's all just vanilla crap that they talk about, and then they cut to a commercial. This, I mean, they just keep talking and talking and talking. Alex is drinking. I think he was smoking a little bit. Joe Rogan, of course, is drinking and smoking. Eddie Bravo steps in. I would highly, highly recommend watching this. If you can't watch it and listen, just listen to it. But I would definitely recommend watching and listening, because just watching Alex's mannerisms and just how fired up he is. I mean, this guy's like on 10 Red Bulls the whole time. It's nuts. I love it. And it's also fun to watch Joe Rogan's reaction and everything, and to the craziness that Alex spews out. So I don't know. I just wanted to do a review of this. My review of this podcast episode, I think this is easily in the top four or five that Joe's ever done. It might be in the top three. And so my review of this podcast episode, I would give this out of 4 stars. I'd give it a 4 out of 4. Um, if I want to give it an Alex Jones rating, I would give it 10 out of 10 reptilian shape-shifting vampires. That's what I would give it. Or 10 out of 10 gay frogs. That's what I would give it if I was Alex Jones. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Check this out. You will not be disappointed. And as always, if you want to get future rants, reviews, or original content, click subscribe. Later.